Hello, and welcome back to the Campfire podcast. So excited to have you again with us this week. Excuse me. We have an exciting podcast for you, and it might be one of our longest ones. And I don't say that to scare you away or to hope that you don't listen. I say that because I think the information and material in here is just incredible. And it's actually a repeat guest. You may remember a few months back we had Andrea Stunz on, and she was talking about how she was walking through healing and restoring her marriage after learning about her husband's infidelity last year. And she had some just great words of encouragement. Well, she's back because there's been a major update to her story. And this time we get to hear, the whole story, a lot of the details. She fills in a lot of the gaps that she's now able to talk about given the circumstances. And so I'm going to let her share the good news with you. That might give it away a little bit. I should have said news, I guess, right? But she's going to share the news with you and really kind of talk about how she got there. And I think it's going to be great. So we will bring her on in a second. But again, just a reminder, we do this podcast every week. I mean, I think when we first started out, we said, we were going to do it as often as possible. Let's just turn it every week. We've only missed a couple. So we're excited that you join us regularly. And if you have any questions for the guests, put them in the comments. Questions for us, people you'd like to see on the podcast, let us know. And we will reach out and try to get them on. We've been able to get some great people from NFL Hall of Famers to actresses to singers to pastors to authors to people like Andrea who are walking through immense pain and struggle and yet seeing miracles and beauty come out of it. So with all that said, let's bring Andrea on and have her really kind of share and walk through what's been going on in her life and why she's celebrating now. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Campfire podcast. We've had a couple, 3-4 repeat guests. I think that you as a repeat guest, the difference between your first time on and the difference between this time is going to be probably the most drastic and different.
I wish you could see me smiling because yes, it is very drastic and different than the last time.
And so let me just, I'll reset the stage, and I did a little bit in the intro, but one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you back on was we did a post recently where one of Kirk's guests on the Campfire web show talked about there's always hope for marriage. And I was just really shocked by the amount of people who responded on Kirk's Facebook page that really did not believe that. And we'll get into that, and I'm going to ask a specific question about that. But you are someone who has a lot of hope for marriage. And last time you joined, you were talking about the fact that you were going through a very difficult time with your husband after, finding out about infidelity and whatnot. So we'll get into all of that. But before we do, remind people who you are and what you do.
So I would be happy to. So I'm going to start out with an intro to myself that is very Celebrate Recovery based, and anyone who's been through Celebrate Recovery will understand. So I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. That is who I am mostly. I'm a wife of 30 years. I'm a mom to 3 amazing adult children. 2 of them are married, and they're all fully functioning adults, which is amazing. And I am a very grateful Guinea grandmother. Just a little bit about me. I mean, I hate snakes. I love coffee. I'm an Enneagram 6 with a wing 5, in case anyone's into that. Fear and anxiety are my weaknesses, but courage is my superpower. And I have drawn from that a lot over this last year. I'm a writer. I'm a hopeful author. I've lived in 4 different countries and traveled to countless others. I pretty much stay packed and ready for the next adventure.
Which you are
That's me in a nutshell.
Which you are about to embark on one of those adventures, and
Yes.
so let's just get right into that.
Yeah. All right.
You do have a major update. The last time we talked, you were walking through the midst of a lot of tragedy in your marriage. Like I said, you discovered infidelity on your husband's part, and but you've when you talked to us last time, you were really in the depths, in the midst of that. You decided that you were going to work through it. There were biblical grounds, obviously, for divorce, and you said, no, I'm going to stick through this. And your husband showed the desire to work through it as well. So
exactly,
you've recently announced a big update. So tell us what that update is, and tell us about it.
Well, so the update, excuse me, is basically that we are unseparated. So we've basically been separated for a year. This past April was a year. Gosh, it is so involved, which anything that has to do with marriage infidelity or just any kind of, hard trauma situations is very complicated. So, but yeah, so basically in a nutshell, we are unseparated now and moving forward with a life together. So that's a very unexpected place to be, because even as of this past April, at the beginning of April, we both had pretty much certainty that we were done, that our marriage was over. So,
so what happened? I mean, how does that happen? How do you go from even not just from last year, right? But even going from April to, we're in June now as we're recording this podcast. What happened in those last 3 months or 2 months that made you realize, no, this isn't over? We're not only is it not over, not only are we continue fighting for it, and you still are, but we're going to do it, together in the same house. And literally physically alongside of each other. So what happened? How'd you get to that point?
So, I mean, really the best way that I can describe it, and really probably the only way I should describe it, is just a miracle. It is a miracle from God. And I say that cautiously because I know that a lot of people pray for this same type of miracle that my marriage is getting, and they don't get that type of miracle. And I know, for me, our marriage is being restored. But other people's miracles, that may come in the strength to move on to a new place, and find restoration and healing after their marriage ends. I know people whose miracles came with their second marriage, So I'm hesitant to say that. We just have to realize that all miracles look different. So if I can, put that as a caveat,
sure.
That would be good, because our miracles all look different. God knows how to, he's just like the master or master maestro, he just knows how to put things together if we're willing to follow his path. So,
was there something on your husband's part that made it really clear to you, that miracle was happening in the way that you had been praying for?
Yeah. So actually, if I can, you can edit some of this out if you want to, but it's just such a long and involved story.
Hey, that's
and I hate to leave
okay.
anything out, but I can't leave.
That's the beauty of a podcast. It can be as long as we want.
That's right. So, okay. So in a nutshell, in a very brief nutshell, very small nutshell, at the beginning of April, we both had agreed that our marriage was over. It was a year from demolition day. We were both certain it was over. We hadn't talked specifically about our marriage being over, but we have talked about it since then. What I say post miracle, and we reflect that we really were both sure that it was over. There were some things that had happened, some decisions that were made, not in terms of relapse or infidelity or anything, but just some things that didn't go as I needed them to go. And I just thought, okay, well, then we're done. So, and he was pretty sure that we were done as well. So that was the beginning of April. I went on a trip with my youngest daughter, who's 20. We're going to the UK for 2 weeks. And by the advice of my therapist and a coach that I was working with, we just all agreed that we would put our stuff on the shelf and for those 2 weeks so that I could go and have a good trip with my daughter and then come back, and follow on. I mean, I had my whole list of, I had the divorce lawyer name, I had everything lined out, what I needed to do, what I needed to plan for, and how I was going to work all this out. And here we went. So But I had told my husband before, I had asked my husband before we left, because, it's his daughter too. And I said, and we do love our kids, and I think we'll get to that later. But our kids have been a huge, not an influence on why we stayed together, because that's probably not the healthiest thing to do. Plus our kids are adults. We didn't need to stay together,
right,
to raise our family. They were already raised. And it was just us two, it's just us two in the house. So anyway, I had just asked him if while I'm gone on this trip with our daughter, can we just be kind and, just kind of put things on the shelf and, not stir anything up and not make waves. And, and he agreed. And so we just I went on my trip and worked through some triggers that I was having to work through on that trip, because we were going back to some places where we had lived and where some issues, had happened. And I knew that I was going to have to work on some of that stuff. And I just didn't want anything else to kind of clog the situation up and make it harder on me than it needed to be. So he graciously agreed. He said, I'm in full support of that. So then over the course of those 2 weeks while we were gone, my daughter and I were overseas, then we just, we communicated, my husband and I, via email quite a bit. And it was just as if there was a sense of, well, this is over anyway. And we both like each other. We can still communicate, and we're going to have to figure out a way to communicate. So why not communicate? But it just, those 2 weeks of ongoing email communications, I don't know, it just opened up the door for vulnerability. And it was kind of like we're done. So what the heck?
What do you got to lose, right?
There's nothing in the way. There was just nothing in the way. And it just, God did some things in me. I can't tell his story, but God did some things in him. And it was just like everything that we've been working for really over our whole 30-year marriage, but specifically in the last 8, and then dealing specifically in this last year where the real hard work has been done. It was just like for lack of a better term, a reboot. Like everything synced up at the same time, and something just clicked. And it was just like we were both open, we were both willing, we were both vulnerable. He showed signs of empathy that he had never shown in that way before, which is exactly what my heart needed, was empathy from him. And so I was just like, well, this is interesting. So then I got back from England, and it was different on the spot. Like, it was just like, I don't even know who this man is. I am different. I am better. He is different. He is better. And okay, well, are we doing this? One specific incident that happened while I was in England is my daughter and I got to go to St. Paul's Cathedral for Easter service. And I don't know if you remember on Easter Sunday, but the Sri Lanka bombings had happened that morning.
You're right. Yes.
And, and that was just hours before the Easter service that we went to in England. And so it was really emotional for me, because I felt that, I felt being in a vulnerable place in St. Paul's Cathedral, which would be, a phenomenal place for a terrorist to hit on, a bunch of Western Christians on Easter Sunday, and they had already, things have already happened in Sri Lanka. So I'm thinking, well, if I died today, there would be no better place that I could think of to die than, in the amazingly beautiful, spiritual place at St. Paul's Cathedral. So, which, by the way, my ancestors laid the first stone and the last stone of St. Paul's Cathedral.
I remember hearing your mom, who is my wife's grandmother, say that. Who got really into genealogies and for all those people who are like, oh, it's a lost cause. What do you want? And just, you can find out some really interesting things as a
Yeah, you really can. So so my dad's ancestors actually one generation laid the first stone and another generation laid the last. So there's a lot of history and meaning to me in being there on Easter Sunday. So anyway, so the message that God kept telling me throughout that service was, time is fleeting. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? What do you want? And that just kind of just an overarching message, that whole service. Time is fleeting. What do you want to do? Time is fleeting. What do you want to do? And so I went outside and I told my daughter, I said, I'm going to need a few minutes. And so I ended up calling my husband. He was in Kazakhstan and he was awake at the time. So called him and said, I don't know why I'm calling you, but God has told me to call you. And I just needed to tell you that, whether we make it or not, I love you. And I own that. I can't not love you. I always have, and I always will, whether we're together or not. I can't change the fact that I love you. And he said, he was surprised, and he said, thank you for sharing that with me. And he loved me too. So we both agreed at that moment that we loved each other. We knew that. There was no question in that. We just love each other. So, but it was painful to say that because there were like expectations behind that. But now, having done all of the healing work that I've done, and being able to own my stuff, I can honestly own that I love him, and we may not stay together, but I love him. So anyway, so it was just like that kind of thing. And I needed to tell him that because time is fleeting. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What do you want to do with the rest of your life? And so we still had another week of the trip. And so my husband and I continue to communicate via email, and it switched. Some things were starting to change. And I think we both got to the place where we thought, we just really want to be together. And I don't know how that looks, and we don't know what to do with that because of all the past junk that, is still there. But I had a dream one night while we were in England that was really a hard dream, but I think God just, like I said, God just orchestrated so much of this stuff to lean to everything that has happened. So, but I had a dream that, my husband was elderly and dying in a hospital bed. And I went to visit him, but there was another woman there taking care of him. And that dream really shook me. And I thought, no, that's not what I want. I'm sitting here, I'm almost going to cry now, but it's like, that's not what I want. I want to be the one taking care of him when he's sick and when we're old. And so that happened before the service at St. Paul's. And it just, all of that stuff just kind of played together. I'm like, okay, so what am I going to let go? If we're meant to be together, what am I willing to let go of? And anyway, so we still have work to do. We're not so delusional to think that everything is, like fixed all of a sudden, but we're still going to work on things and we're going to work on them moving forward, together.
So I'm going to bounce around a little bit here because I think you said some incredible things that I just love to dig into deeper.
Okay.
Let's go back to what you just said. You said you were going to have to give up some things. What does that look like? And I'm especially approaching that question from someone who has been in your position, who might say, Andrea, you don't have to give up anything. What are you talking about? You were the one that was hurt. Yeah. You were the one that was cheated on and whatnot. So what does that mean? What is it when you say you had to give up some stuff? What is that?
I had to let go, and I'm still letting go. I would say again, cautiously, for anyone who's listening, who's in the pain of this, because I'm still in there. I still have a lot of triggers, and I think that's going to be ongoing. This is something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life. You don't just get over this. So when I say letting go, I think I needed to let go of some anger and some bitterness, some hurt that that some things. So let me see if I can rephrase this coherently. Some things that aren't mine to carry. Does that make any sense? Like things that, like carrying things that are God's to carry. I can't change the past. There's a lot of hurt there. I have to heal from that. That the healing part is mine to carry. But the things that happened are not mine to carry. And I'm still in the process of letting go of a lot of it because it is still very painful and I have to work through the healing process. A really great therapy term is you can't heal what you don't feel. So I have to feel it so that I can heal it. But letting go of what my expectations for him, it comes from a place of ownership of myself and my being and my feelings and being confident in my trust in myself and my trust in God, because I can't trust what he's going to do. I can't control what he's going to do. My husband, that is. So am I okay with today? You know, am I going to be okay today? And one of the things that has helped me a lot, to think through, is that am I going to give up what's possibly good for today for the potential of what may or may not even happen tomorrow? And that motivates me because I want the good of today, and the good now with my husband and us being together is pretty good, you know. and it's something that for the last year I couldn't have imagined happening. But it's like we both had to give up. It's hard to put it into words, but we both had to let go of some things, let go of some things, and let go of things that we can't control.
Yeah, listen, if this was an easy thing to explain, you know, it would be an easy thing to explain, right?
Right. It's not an easy thing to explain. And I think the biggest thing for someone else to hear is that, you know, maybe it's not explainable. I don't know. Are miracles explainable? I have no idea.
Great point.
I don't think that they are. So maybe the letting go has to be that you just can't explain it. You know, maybe the letting go is just accepting the mystery of it all.
I love that.
And being okay with just what we've got. You know, the serenity prayer is huge for me over this last year because it's just, you know, taking one day at a time and doing today and getting today what we can get today and having the good of today in hopes for good tomorrow. So
I want to go back to one other thing you said earlier, and I think this was fascinating. It's that, you know, when you got to the point in April where you and your husband decided that it seemed like you were both on the same page of like, all right, this is over, right? You've given it a try. But you said that you know, the call to tell you love him, and you said, you know, even if we get divorced, I still love you, and I'd like, if you can try to explain that. I think that's really fascinating. I think that's really interesting because it goes to, you know, an underlying tone of, I think, respect despite hurt. And so how, you know, if I were someone that was in your position, maybe fresh on, and I said, Andrea, I could never, you know, how can I divorce her and love her at the same time?
Right. Well, that's something that I never was able to reconcile for this whole last year, even going through all the pain. But it's something that I had to think through and think it wouldn't hurt so bad if I didn't love him. This, you know, pain is only pain because something hurt, because you love it, you know, with a person, you know, I mean, like it's different when you get a cut or something, that's different, but emotional pain, spiritual pain, those are, you know, suffering and sorrow, those are things that would not exist without love. You have to have, you can't have one without the other. You can't know love without sorrow because you you wouldn't understand what love is if you didn't understand sorrow. So, and then vice versa. So even throughout this whole last year, I've been able to see that it really only hurts so bad because I love him.
Right.
And I didn't want to love him. I mean, I certainly didn't want to love him. I was like, I really would like to hate him, you know. And there are parts of what he did that I hated and that I detested.
Sure.
And still do detest, you know, and do not like knowing some of the things that he's done. But I saw a meme the other day that said something about how if we could look past the skin and love the soul. And I think that's it. I think deep down, I know his soul, and I know he loves Jesus, and I know he loves me, and I know he's sorrowful and remorseful for what he's done. And I can love his soul. I don't have to love the outside package so much, but I do love his soul. And even through the pain, I couldn't not love him. I don't know how else to explain that.
Yeah, that's great.
Was, you know,
So let's kind of go. We'll kind of marry these two questions, if you will. But you posted a picture a few days ago, I believe, and it was a picture of you, your husband, grandkids, and a newly born grandchild.
Yeah.
And you're holding your grandchild, and you know, you had a really great explanation of this picture. Is that this happened months ago, and you never posted this picture. And you were basically explaining how you and your husband wanted to, you know, as much as possible, make sure that the kids and grandkids knew they were loved by both. That even though your husband had made this mistake, that he wasn't, he wasn't this person to be ostracized, this person to be shut out or shunned. And it really hit me. I thought that it was such a beautiful thing. And now that I'm hearing more of the story, right, you can see how maybe the Lord has kind of orchestrated those things in the past. But I guess, how were you not able? Because this is still, and I think actually around this time is when you maybe were thinking that you were done, right?
Oh yeah, this was last July, and so that was several months after what I call Demolition Day,
right.
D-Day.
So I guess my question is, you know, I know a couple going through a divorce right now, okay, and they can't have a conversation that is, you know, doesn't seem to end up with, you know, figuratively at each other's throats, not physically, figuratively, right? Yeah. And I guess so I see that picture. I know I'm kind of walking through this with them, and I just say, how do you not let your hurt turn to hate? How do you do that? I mean, because I think there's so many people who just, you know, I hate to be corny and Star Warsy, but you know, it's easy to give into hate, right? And
it is.
It's easy to give into the dark side. And
it is.
So what was your means to combat that? So that and I guess separately, how did you handle this with your children so that you weren't trying to necessarily like turn them against your husband?
Mm-mm. Well, so gosh, that's a lot.
I know.
So how did I not turn hurt into hate? I can't say that I was always successful at that, because in my private moments, I've had some pretty dark times that I think everybody that's gone through this or deep trauma would understand that. So, but with our kids, you know, this wasn't their fault. They didn't do anything to deserve this kind of hurt. And so, you know, I think the picture that I shared with my husband and I and our 3 grandkids at the time, in my mind, I wanted that picture of us for them, because if we made it, or even if we didn't make it, I wanted them to know that their grandparents loved them. I wanted them to see that picture of us together someday and know that their grandparents loved them more than the pain that they were going through. So there was that, you know, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to share it, because I didn't know, you know, it may have just been just for them, you know, for years down the road, so that they could see their grandma and grandpa together. because we may not have stayed together. I didn't know what was going to happen at that time, but there was a pretty good chance that we weren't going to make it, then. But how we coexisted, how we did things together was just because we loved our kids, and it wasn't their fault. They didn't do anything to deserve the extra pain. My husband, may not have done some good things as a husband, but he has always been a good father. And he didn't do anything to hurt them specifically. It wasn't like he set out to go hurt his family, so that wasn't his intention. But it was important for me for our kids to know that that they're still loved, and that they're still valuable, and that whatever happens, their mom and dad and their grandparents love them.
Mm. So let me go back to the kind of hurt and hate question, and so let me put it this way: is you admitted that, hey, there were times of weakness, there were times that I didn't do good at that,
right?
But obviously at this point you don't hate him, right? And so where did that?
I want to.
Yeah,
I want to.
And so,
I wanted to hate him.
Yeah.
But at this point, I don't. Yeah.
And so where did that maybe? How did you go from moments of weakness where you did to where you don't now, and you're obviously I would say full blown in the reconciliation process.
Yeah. Yeah. So there were two factors for me that bubbled to the top. One of them was, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the angry, bitter, cynical, miserable. That's not who I want to be.
Right.
So what am I going to do about that? Because I can control that in me. I can't control what anybody else does, but I can fix that in me. I can not be that person. So that was a huge motivating factor for me. It still is. I have to think about that consciously all the time. Like, nope, I'm not going there. That's I don't want to be that person. That is not who I want to be. And that's not who God created me to be. The second thing was, and this comes up a lot in all areas of my life, is I am just not willing to give Satan anything more than he's already taken. He can't have any more. He's taken enough already.
Wow.
I'm just not going to give him anything else. If I can help it, I'm not giving it to him.
Not today,
and
Satan.
So not today. And I know spiritual warfare is real. I know that, I hesitate I don't go too far into all of that, because I really want to put focus on God and trusting God and letting God lead the path. But at the same time, I'm like, dang, he's stolen so much from me and my life and my kids and my family and even in my husband.
Yeah.
Sin is something that Satan, did, and so I just, in all of it, I'm just not willing to give him anymore. I'm just not going to do it. If I can help it, he can't have this. He can't have it.
That's so good.
So.
That's so good. Let's take it a little bit, kind of, a little more 30,000 foot, maybe off your specific story. I guess my question, let's go back to what I talked about, the post that I posted on Kirk's Facebook page. Karen Eman is a Proverbs 31 author, and she, her point in this interview with Kirk was that she believes there is always hope for marriage. It doesn't mean that they're always going to end up, like you said, how people are praying or whatnot, but there's at least hope. And she told this story, actually kind of similar to yours, in that there was a husband who cheated on his wife and actually had a child with another woman. And they still, after a lot of work, reconciled, and now he's a pastor, and they kind of have this marriage ministry. So what I was shocked about was the amount of people who are saying, reacted to that post on Kirk's page that said, no, well, yeah, great. Maybe she thinks there's always hope, but you know what? She hasn't been in my situation, or she hasn't heard of what my husband did or what my wife did, or whatnot. And so I guess, my question to you would be, what do you say to those people like that have commented, who are losing hope, who have lost hope, who are divorced, after something that did happen. What do you say to that person who says, no hope?
Yeah. Well, first I would say I totally get it. I totally get it. I understand the deep pain that can suck us in and not and just cloud hope. I get it. So I am not going to tell someone that if they've lost hope, that's completely unrealistic because I know how it can happen. But I will say that if I didn't believe in hope, I would be an absolute disaster of a human being. You would find me in a fetal position or maybe not even alive. I would, without hope. Hope is everything. And I would say that there is always hope for everything. There's always hope for everything. So even in a marriage, even in a divorce, even in, if you believe in God and if you have faith, then hope is just something that is, it just is.
Yes.
It's like breath. You can't, I would venture to say, I'm not a theologian, but I would venture to say that if you call yourself a believer, that hope is just like your oxygen. So, and the other thing I would say is that we have, in having hope, we have to have hope in that this is God's story and not mine, not ours. So that was something that has also helped me a lot in going through what I've been through, what I've worked through, is that realizing that I don't own this story, that this is a chapter in the gospel of Christ, really helped me a lot to take the ownership, put the ownership where it belongs. And it's like, okay, if this is God, then God, you fix this,
Yeah.
So this is not mine to fix. So another element of that I've recently been hashing out is the difference between expectations and hope. And I think that's something that's been very important for me to realize, is that expectations are always going to disappoint us. And expectations but hope is never going to disappoint us. Hope is never going to disappoint us. Expecting God to fix my marriage feels and looks very different than hoping He will do the best, that He will do what's best as it fits into my chapter of the gospel story. Expectations to me, how I see them, are wanting God to do something that I want to happen. And I've been there and I've done that. But hope to me is having faith in what God can do and trusting His way is going to be better than mine. So I just the difference between having an expectation is my will. Hope is hoping in God's will. Does that make?
That's the first time.
It's been huge for me to realize that.
That's the first time I've ever heard anyone say something like, and I'm gonna have to go think about that now in a good way. Not that I disagree with you.
If you come up with anything, this is a fairly new revelation for me. So if you come up with anything different, then let me know. But it makes a lot of sense to me because I would venture to say that I'm probably the queen of expectations, but realizing that hope is so much better, because I can expect something to happen, and if it doesn't happen, I'm disappointed. But if I hope for something to happen, then that's just putting my faith in God and trusting His way.
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't happen, you can't really be disappointed if a hope doesn't happen. It's just a hope,
Right. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So what is your, and this may be hard, but what is your single, maybe best piece of advice, single best encouragement for someone? And I say someone because in your situation it was your husband, but I've walked through this with people where it was the wife who was going out on the weekends secretly and sleeping around and whatnot, right? So what is your single best encouragement for someone, a husband or a wife, who finds themselves in the position that you were a year ago, 6 months ago, where you uncover this, where, maybe an immediate divorce doesn't happen, but, that's a possibility.
Yep.
What is your piece of advice to someone like that?
My biggest piece of advice for a betrayed spouse is to heal you. Because there needs to be forward movement in your own healing to become the healthiest version of you that you can be. This is the time when actually the gift of separation or the gift of aloneness it seems like an oxymoron, but it is a gift and has been a gift for me to have had this last year of a lot of time with just me and God and my therapist. So, but to heal myself and to work hard on becoming the person that God created me to be is the best thing I could have done. Because in all of that, I was able to say, if my marriage works or if my marriage doesn't work, I'm going to be okay. Yes. I'm going to be healthy. And that's my biggest piece of advice. I work with a ministry here out of San Antonio called the overarching ministry is Be Broken, but I work under the umbrella of that Be Broken ministries is Jonathan Daugherty. Anyway, seems like there's been something on. Y'all have had something from him, but anyway, so there's a wives care ministry underneath that, and I help do the webinars, a basics wives care webinar for that. We do it monthly, but that's our goal, is to help wives understand that you need to be healthy. We can't control what our husbands do. A betrayed husband can't control what his wife does, but you can choose to be the healthiest version of you that you can be. This is what we can do right now. When everything else, when the apple cart has completely spilled over and everything seems out of control, the one thing that we can do is take care of ourselves and become and follow that path to becoming healthy.
And I think I hope people listening will hear that too. And I think that advice is good, not just for when things are in crisis. And what I mean by that is, in the marriage courses and stuff that we have as part of the Campfire, I think if I were to distill one of the biggest pieces of advice that Kirk and Chelsea give, it's stop trying to fix your spouse and fix yourself. And so you're saying invest in yourself, right? And so I think those are all good things that we can do when we look at the marriage and say, oh, my marriage is pretty good, my marriage is pretty healthy. I mean, those are the times I think that you invest in yourself and strengthen, so that when the hard times come, your strength level is up at the top, not, if it's in the middle and hard times come, you're quickly depleted,
Right. Well, and some of those things it's like a slippery slope. I liken it to where, you put the frog in the pot of water and turn the heat up. The frog doesn't know it's starting to boil. And so some of these things, if we don't constantly work on, and I'm guilty of this. I haven't dealt with a lot of my stuff that I should have been dealing with until this last year. So this last year, talking about the gift of aloneness, talking about the gift of pain, it has been a gift for me in a lot of ways. One that I would hope that I never have to repeat. But there's been some significant gifts in this journey for me over this last year. In dealing with some things that I needed to deal with, and not really even realizing that I needed to deal with them, but opening up Pandora's box, so to speak. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I didn't know that I had that, and just becoming healthy. And oh my gosh, I am such a better version of me now than I've ever been. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. And, and that is how I can move forward in a relationship with my husband, after everything that has happened, because I am better. I am healthy. I am in sync with, and I'm in a good relationship with God. And I can trust God more than I need to trust my husband. I want to trust him, but I don't necessarily need to trust him. And I know that probably sounds weird, but, I need to trust, my need is to trust in God more and know that he's got my back. And that if the bottom drops out tomorrow, if the worst thing that I could envision happening happens tomorrow, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's going to suck and it's going to hurt, but I'm going to be okay. And and I enjoyed today. And today I got to be married for one more day to my husband. So
praise God for that. Well, listen, so what is next, right? On a practical level. So you're getting, you're getting the band back together. What does that look like, on a practical level for you guys?
Okay. So this was one of my favorite questions that I was hoping we got to, because it is probably going to be completely unexpected for a lot of people to hear this, because I haven't really said much about it publicly. But we are actually, I'll backtrack just a little bit if I can, because it will make a little bit more sense. So one of the things that I had asked my husband to do early on, or actually this past March, was something that he was not comfortable doing. And it was in the vein of figuring out how we could rebuild trust. And so something that he wasn't comfortable doing, that hurt me, but we worked, he talked to his therapist, I talked to mine, and that, we kind of came to agreement that, okay, well, without that, I don't know that we can survive. So once we decided that we were actually going to move forward together, he had been thinking and praying and coming up with a plan of, okay, since I'm not doing that, what am I going to do to help rebuild trust in my marriage? And this was what he, decided to do. So for this last year, he's actually been working overseas in Kazakhstan. So he's been working, a month there and then a month home. And, but one of his things that he decided to do, was, with my approval, after we discussed it, he wanted to leave that position and work in a regular job, I guess, where we could actually be together, and he's not traveling. So that was in an effort to rebuild trust. That was the main thing that he wanted to try to do. And of course I agreed to that. And, so we're selling our house and moving back to the Houston area, and he's going to be working in the office, and he won't be traveling. And if he does travel, then I will travel with him. That's our understanding. And, we won't be prisoners to each other.
Sure.
Actually, he gets back from Kazakhstan this week, and then we moved to Houston on Sunday, and then I leave again for leave again for a writing conference on Tuesday. So it's not like we're going to be together like all
attached
the time,
at the hip.
Stuck like glue. Yeah, because that's not healthy either. There has to be a life. I have to live my life, and he has to live his. So, but anyway, so the fun part of this is that nobody really expects is that, Jon, we're like getting rid of everything. We're selling everything, not even selling, we're giving almost everything in our house away, and moving into our 27-foot or smaller, maybe even smaller than that, camper.
Which I am actually a little jealous about.
Yeah. And so once the house is sold, our plan is to just buy a larger travel trailer and a bigger truck to pull it. And we have no plans at this time to buy another house. So we will see where that goes. That plan can always change. We can go buy a house if we want to. But for right now, we're really looking forward to lightening the load. It feels like a whole brand new, fresh start.
Yeah.
Getting, out with the old and with the new kind of thing. And just starting over. It feels very much like a second marriage in a whole lot of ways. So
listen, I think there's truth and wisdom in the idea that sometimes when you shed spiritual baggage, when you shed emotional baggage, physically shedding, actual baggage, stuff, getting rid of stuff. Yeah, it's healthy, right? I think there's something to the fact that Marie Kondo is a Netflix hit, right? Because there is a cleansing and a refreshing when you start doing physical acts of cleansing and refreshing that that I think your mind shifts a little bit. So it's funny because my wife Brett, who is Andrea's niece, is a shedder, right? I mean, if it were up to her, we'd be basically cleaning out the closets every week. And I have hoarding mentalities that I get from my mother, bless her soul. And so, recently though, I've been the one that's like, what if we just sold everything and got a trailer and, just traveled around? I could write and do my job from anywhere.
There's a lot of fear in that. So if for anyone who knows Enneagram, the 6 is the motivating factor is fear, and the redemptive factor is courage. So the fear that I have when I'm healthy is met by tremendous courage. And so I think that's where I'm at right now. It's just like, you know what? These are a lot of memories that we're getting rid of, a lot of things that are nice, even not even just memorable, or that have meaning, but they're just nice things. Like we're going to have to replace those someday, that kind of thing. But I think it goes back to what we talked about before and being willing to let go. What are you willing to let go of? And I am just so ready to let go of it all. Start over. My husband and I kind of joke every now and then. I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but we kind of joke. He's done some things. I told you before we were just both so different. And we've come, kind of just become who we're supposed to be and are comfortable in our own skin kind of thing. And I think, he's done some things that I'm like, or said something. I was like, my first husband would have never said that. and he's like, yeah, no, my second wife would have never done that. My first wife would have never done that. So it's just fun. We're having fun with it.
That's great.
It's been a crazy, there's still a lot of anxiety. There's still a lot of fear. There's a lot of what ifs. But letting go of some of the junk, some of the stuff, figuratively and literally, and embracing what the joy that we can have in today, and letting ourselves owning that love and owning what we love today and finding joy in it. In fact, we named our camper Joy. And so when we get a new camper, she'll be Joy 2. Joy 2,
there you go. Or Joyful.
So, joy, yeah. So it's exciting. It's, there's some anxiety, but
sure.
But yeah, we can do today. We can do today.
Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for opening up and going into detail. This is, I think we might make this whole podcast free for everyone, because I think I would love that. I would actually love for the first one to, maybe be available as well, just so they can kind of hear what was going on, right?
Before then, and because I don't want to share just the good stuff. I think people need to hear that, oh yeah, they really did go through it, because I think that's where the good in the story is. It's not focusing on the bad, but knowing the journey, and then seeing what God can do and how God is, the 3 benchmarks that I had early on, and I think I brought these up in the first podcast that we did, was, am I bringing glory to God? Am I being kind? And am I healthy, mind, body, and soul? And so I really can look back, and I think those were 3 amazing benchmarks. And I really feel like now I have the opportunity to, because of everything that has happened, can bring glory to God in a very real and genuine way.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. That's what I hope people see or hear from our story is that God is good.
Well, I don't think you can listen to this podcast, listen to your story, not get chills, not tear up a little bit. And so I think it is going to be a blessing to many. What the devil, terms for evil, the Lord turns to uses for His glory and our good. And so,
Amen.
Real quickly, where can people find out more about your writing and read what you're doing?
So the easiest place to be, my blogs are kind of all schizophrenic right now. I call myself a schizophrenic blogger. But if you go to AndreaStunz.com, that's kind of the landing page for where you can find more about me.
And spell that last name real quick.
AndreaStunz.com, AndreaStunz.
Perfect.
And then that'll get you to everywhere. I write encouragement for women. It's for Women for Life on my blog called Empty Plate Full Heart, but that's also listed on AndreaStunz.com. So if you go there, you can find. And then I've written a lot of posts for the courage as well. So Those are over there. So.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much. Give my best to the family, and I'm excited to see you in your little trailer. I'm sure. I hope you bring it up to Dallas.
Oh, well, we're getting it all set up, and I've been, actually we're clearing a lot of things, but Amazon has been busy with me. Amazon keeps sending me thank you notes.
I'm sure.
But because there's, finding cute little organizational things that will make living in a camper a lot easier. So that's been fun. That's been fun to do.
All right, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thank you for helping me share the message. I hope people sense a sense of hope from all of this.
Absolutely.
And their story.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Okay.